Hello, my name is Tom Gamble, and I'm one of the ministers at the Fairland Christian Church, Niles, Michigan. We are on day 4 of walking through the life of Joseph as told in the book of Genesis. Yesterday, we left off with Joseph having interpreted the dreams of both the cupbearer and the baker while they were in prison. Now, Joseph, with God speaking through him, accurately interpreted dreams that both of these men had had. As Joseph had said would happen, the cupbearer was returned to his position and the chief baker was hanged. But before the cupbearer returned to his position, Joseph said, "Remember me when you go back to see the king, because I don't deserve to be here. I've done nothing wrong." Well, the cupbearer forgot all about Joseph and did not remember to talk to the king about him. The Bible tells us that 2 years passed between the end of chapter 40 and chapter 41, where we're going to be at today. We see at the beginning of this chapter that Pharaoh himself has a couple of dreams of his own. I'm going to read what happened in those dreams, starting at the very beginning of chapter 41 of the book of Genesis. The Bible tells us this: "After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep, and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke. And behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh." No one could interpret Pharaoh's dreams. Then, finally, the cupbearer, who I brought back with me today, he remembered Joseph and the ability that he had to interpret dreams. Well, after telling Pharaoh about Joseph, Pharaoh calls Joseph up from prison. Verses 15 and 16 tell us this: "Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." And sitting here to my right, I did bring the king with me, another one of Malachi's stuffed animals. So the king had these 2 dreams and called Joseph up and said, "Joseph, can you interpret them?" And Joseph says, "Well, not me personally, but God can answer your dreams." Well, Joseph let Pharaoh know that it was God, and at that point, Pharaoh turned around and told Joseph about the dreams that he had. Having heard the dreams, Joseph both interprets them and offers a solution to the problem that the dreams foretold. Verses 25 and following read this way: "Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, 'The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. It's a great plan. But who's going to implement that plan? Who's going to take care of the whole project? Pharaoh's decision, verses 38 and 39, we find this. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are." Pharaoh put Joseph in charge. In fact, he made Joseph vice Pharaoh. Well, not exactly, but Pharaoh was second in command behind only Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh gave him a wife, and Joseph, at the age of 30, began the process of storing up food, knowing that the 7 years of famine would surely follow the 7 years of plenty that Egypt was experiencing. Before the famine began, Joseph and his wife had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Then famine struck, but it didn't strike just in Egypt. The chapter ends with these words, "The famine was severe over all the earth." Our lesson for today, we need to make wise use of our time. You know, Joseph knew exactly how much time he had to get Egypt ready for the famine. 7 years. You know, that may seem like a long time, but he had a very tall task to fulfill. Enough food needed to save the entire nation of Egypt. But as we'll see tomorrow, he was also saving food for those who lived beyond the borders of Egypt. Joseph knew how much time he had to work with. When it comes to how much longer we'll be dealing with the far-reaching effects of the coronavirus, we don't know. We don't know. Some are out of work. For how long? Don't know. Some have had their hours cut back. For how long? Don't know. Some have seen their pay reduced. For how long? Don't know. Some have had to find other means of daycare. For how long? We don't know. Some have found too much time on their hands, and that can be dangerous. For how long will this go on? We don't know. Others may be working overtime, consistently doing so to meet the needs of the sick and to keep grocery stores' shelves stocked. Others may be working the same hours, but the stress level seems unbearable. For how long will this go on? We don't know. What we do know is this: we need to make wise use of our resources, both the time that God has blessed us with and the other resources that He's blessed us with. Whether that's more time or less or the same, whether we have more income, less income, or the same, we still need to be faithful stewards of what God has blessed us with and what He's entrusted to us. Today's prayer focus is this: ask God for wisdom. Ask him for wisdom to use the resources and the time that he's given you in a way that honors him. Consider these verses about wisdom. The Bible tells us this in James chapter 1 verse 5, "But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him." And then a few passages from Proverbs, which is full of wisdom. Proverbs 2:2, "Make your ear attentive to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding." Proverbs 8:11, "For wisdom is better than jewels, and all desirable things cannot compare with her." And Proverbs 9:10, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." Tomorrow, we will look at Genesis chapter 42. We'll see you tomorrow.